Welcome back to week 2 of our series, Miracles, the Marvels of Jesus. Jesus is the greatest superhero ever, and we're taking a look at some of the most amazing miracles he performed. Last week, we talked about Jesus changing water into wine. And this was significant because, number one, it was his first miracle. It was the first thing that put him on the map. And this is so important at the beginning of his ministry for other people to see him, to have people talk about him, and to go, there's something special about this guy. The Bible says that it increased his disciples' faith. They'd already left everything to follow him. They already thought he was a pretty special guy. But then to see this miracle, they knew that he wasn't just a great teacher, that he actually had the power of God in him. The other thing that made this miracle significant was that he used regular people, regular things, and regular tasks to do amazing things. My hope for you is that you realize God can use regular people just like you and me in doing regular tasks that he asks us to do, and miraculous things happen. So this week we're going to look at Jesus feeding the 5,000. Now, when I was a kid, we were never allowed to say, there's nothing to eat in here. My mom, my dad, they always told us, there's always food. There's food in there. You find something, you can make something. My dad used to like to take whatever leftovers were in the fridge, old hot dogs, whatever, and he would add rice and he'd add eggs and he'd put it into a big skillet, and he always made these kinds of things, basically like cleaning out the fridge and putting it all together. And he would show us, you can make things, you can find things to eat. One of those famous things in our house was tuna burritos. And I know that sounds wrong, and I'm Mexican, and it doesn't sound like it should mix. He would make tuna salad, and he would put it on a toasted tortilla with butter, and we'd roll it up, and you can't knock it until you've tried it. And even though these foods aren't miracles, they were pretty tasty, but they weren't miracles. Jesus has been teaching for a long time, and all these people have been following around, and he sees that the people needed food, and he does something amazing. Let's look at today's miracle. This one is out of John chapter 6, verses 1 through 14. After this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A huge crowd kept following him wherever he went, because they saw his miraculous signs as he healed the sick. Then Jesus climbed a hill and sat down with his disciples around him. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now, gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. When the people saw him do this miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he is the prophet we have been expecting." So this story is incredible. Jesus multiplies the food, 5 loaves and 2 fish, and he feeds more than 5,000 people. Honestly, I was trying to find a Marvel Cinematic Universe character with superpowers that was anything like this. Anyone who could multiply things like Jesus. I couldn't think of anything. I kind of thought like Ant-Man, can blow things up and make them bigger. So it's like, if Jesus made the bread really big or the fish really big, but it's not really the same. Jesus' superpower is pretty amazing. So we see this huge crowd following Jesus. As humans, we love to see people do things that we can't do. If anyone has a special ability, we want to go see them. What kind of things draw crowds? Athletes, singers, magicians, actors, anybody who can do something that is way better than the way regular people can do them, we will pay money to see those people do those things. Now, obviously, Jesus didn't charge any money for people to be around him, but it was definitely worth it for them to be with him because they kept doing it. And they would come out in these gigantic crowds and they would tell more people about it. They would crowd around Jesus and follow him and wait to see these amazing things happen. So let's examine this again because we talked a little bit about this last week. Why did Jesus do miracles? Was he looking for attention? Did Jesus feel like if I do these things, then people they'll be my friend. They'll want to be around the cool guy who can do tricks. No, it wasn't that at all. It was signs to prove that he had the power of God. His words were amazing and life-changing, but when he did these signs, when he did these miracles, it was tangible proof to people that he wasn't just a wise person. He wasn't just a great teacher. He was God. Remember, Jesus only did miracles when it changed people's hearts. So let's look specifically at this miracle. Why feed the 5,000 people? Because Jesus had compassion. He saw that there was a bunch of people who were hungry and they'd been following him for a long time. And he's like, well, they're probably getting hungry right now. And it was a chance for him to show God's glory and God's power. Now, compassion is showing concern for the misfortune of others. Notice that it's not thinking, but showing concern. See, we can think about someone and feel sorry for them, but when we actually do it, we are showing compassion. Jesus sees a need and he takes care of it. And he enlists the help of others. He doesn't sit back and say, well, let me just wait for someone else to do it. I really want that to get done, but I don't have time for it. Let me wait for someone else. But he also doesn't go it alone and just say, well, this is my task and I'm going to do this and forget anybody else. I don't need any help. He actually allows other people to be part of the solution, which is really great leadership. We see the same compassion with many of the superheroes in the MCU. I mean, there's a reason why they're superheroes. Most of them are doing it because they have these powers and they want to serve people who are in need. They are full of compassion. And I think especially of Spider-Man because that's all he wants to do. He wants to be a regular guy. He wants to help people use his powers for good. And he wants to take care of the neighborhood and the city in which he lives in. It also makes me think of Baymax from Big Hero 6. La 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 la. Oh, I love Baymax. His whole purpose is to be a care companion, to help you thrive in health, in your emotions, to feel better. Baymax is absolutely one of the most selfless characters in all of the MCU. You just want to hug him, right? He's so squishy and huggable. The disciples didn't quite get what Jesus was capable of. And even though they've been following him for a certain period of time, they underestimated his power. When Jesus says,
what are we going to do to feed these people?
They're thinking, there's nothing you can do. Like they have limited what they think that Jesus is able to do. Luckily, Jesus is not as sensitive as Anakin Skywalker.
You underestimate my power.
Power of whining. So here's what I want to ask you. In what ways do you underestimate God's power? How about when you think a problem is too difficult for God to accomplish? When we think a problem is too big for prayer to even work? I would even say that when we use the phrase,
well, I guess all we can do is pray.
Like it's some sort of last-ditch Hail Mary, like there's no chance for it to actually work, but I guess we could try this. I think actually the opposite. The minute a problem happens, we say, hey, well, first thing off, we can definitely pray. We have to understand that prayer is powerful, that the God behind these prayers is powerful and capable of anything. And the first thing we should do is bring our prayer requests to him. Think about this, guys. If he has the power to speak this universe into existence and the power to move mountains, don't you think he has the power to perform a miracle in your life? So I want to encourage you to learn to pray God's will. Pray for his plan to be done. And pray with expectation that God will answer your prayers according to his will. And whatever that outcome is, we're cool with it because God knows what's best. Again, like last week, what did Jesus use to do this amazing miracle? Regular stuff. 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. And he involved this little kid. He's like, you get to be a part of God's amazing story. How do you think that impacted that kid's faith? Like all his life, this kid's going to be telling this story about how All he did was give over his lunch, which, by the way, what kind of kid is eating 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish? Like, that's a lot. Well, I mean, like, it's like some big giant Kentucky boy. He's like, I got me these 5 loaves of bread and all this catfish. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of lunch. It seems like more than I could have eaten. But I think it probably had this tremendous effect on this kid and his whole life. He remembers that he was part of this and he got to witness something amazing and miraculous. Impacted his disciples, I'm sure, again, and all of the people who were there watching this going, this is amazing what this Jesus can do. I think one of the other awesome little details about it is how Jesus always gives back more than what we give. They take 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and they feed more than 5,000 people. And then it said there's leftovers that they're gathering together in basket. There were 12 baskets full of leftovers. God always goes over and above what we need. He's good. He loves you and he wants to do amazing things in your life. I want to challenge you to trust Jesus to provide more than enough for you. He is bigger than your biggest problems, and he had the answer long before you ever even had the problem. He wants to do amazing things in your life if you give him the opportunity and you trust him. Next week, Jesus walks on water. See you then.